All right, I'm going to tell you a story. It's a story about the history of this forest and what happened decades ago and a century ago, even longer. You can go back to the 1850s when this area was a logging camp. See, a long time ago in the Santa Cruz Mountains, there were all these very active logging and milling operations that used the water power from these creeks. These creeks really moved. During the wintertime, the water that would come through here would just be tremendous. And they're seasonal, but they do keep running all year round. So some of the construction that the sawyers had to do was to develop the creeks in such a way so that they could create small reservoirs, small dams, so that they could keep a consistent flow of water going over the water wheel. And this is an abutment for a dam. I have no idea when it was built, but it's ancient. And this over here, oh, look at that. Over on the right-hand side, this was kind of cool. I thought it was stuffing from a stuffed animal, and I looked at it closely, and it's fungus. It was growing on that tree, and it was blowing up and drifting down. It was all over the place in different stages. Now, getting back to this little road here, there was a bridge here at one time. And the bridge went across the creek. This was another little runoff that came down, a tributary that fed the main creek. But that was the road that brought the carriages or the team of oxen down in here. You can only imagine what went on down here, but it was a very, very active area. I love looking around for artifacts. And the artifacts are sometimes stonework or things that survive. This little dam down here, for instance, there's a good story about this. Years ago, about 25 years ago, this dam, somebody decided to put boards back into it before this first part fell down. And they re-established this as a reservoir. They put 2x6s down in here, and then they put sheet plastic down, and then they put rocks on the bottom. And sure enough, this whole area filled up with water. And the reservoir went back as far as you can see. And I went swimming in there. It was about 4 to 5 feet deep. And it was pretty amazing. And then later on in the season, when the winter came, all the rocks came down and filled up that reservoir. And that reservoir had rocks all the way to the top of the boards. So it became a waterfall. So the whole next year, the water would rush down here and it would come over the top in a great volume and be a big waterfall. And the following year, the boards broke and all those rocks washed away again. Now this is kind of cool. I love finding old redwood stumps because there's always a story. Imagine cutting this thing down with nothing but a whipsaw, a two-man saw, and maybe an axe. So lumber work, milling work, and sawmill work, logging work, it was all pretty quiet. It was entirely different. You'd hear the swishing of the saw and the chopping of the axe. And then occasionally somebody would call out timber and this giant tree would fall down. And one time there was a fire. There's evidence of a fire that came through here. I have no idea when that was. But I can imagine that the loggers and the sawyers in here left quite a mess. And they cut off all the branches and it became a big tinderbox of small branches. And all it would take is a bit of lightning or whatever, and this whole place burned down. Now the creek is really an interesting story. I've been coming here for 40 years. And you think those big boulders are stable and are always in that same spot? Think again. Every single one of these big rocks is constantly being moved around. Now, there's yet another big stump. And look at the trees that grew off of that stump. They're giant redwoods in their own right. And if you look really close up underneath this cave, you can see some aerial roots coming down from that giant redwood tree. Let's see if we can take a closer look up here. Oh, there we go. Those roots are coming out in midair, and you can climb all the way underneath this giant tree. And what's really remarkable is if you look way up there, you see this tree it looks like it's being supported by that maple tree. I don't know how big it is, but I don't know why it's still standing. There's yet another old stump. Every one of these stumps tells a story. You can look at it where the log fell and what was going on. And the roads that were cut in here, all of this was horse and buggy and teams of oxen. And, there was very, very little noise out here from machinery. The only thing you might find would be maybe a steam donkey that would, pull logs up the hill. But this was quite an active area for decades, for the longest time. Saratoga, the main road through Saratoga, was actually called Lumber Road. And they've been doing some development in here. And this bridge was not here last year. This is a brand new bridge that they just put in. They're trying to develop the trail system up here. And you can now hike from Saratoga to Quarry Park. And from Quarry Park, you can go all the way up to Skyline Boulevard. And this bridge is brand new. It's a replacement for a bridge that was there a long, long time ago. And who knows what this bridge looked like in the past, but I'm sure it was a timber bridge made out of logs. It was a typical logging bridge, and it just rotted away. But I find the history of this area just fascinating. And when you find evidence of old rock walls or old bits of anything, foundations, and over on the side over here, around the back, there's a evidence of an old fire pit, a fireplace. And so you can imagine, there it is. That's an old fireplace. That's the backside. So that fireplace faced the creek, the whole cabin. It was a tiny little, it was probably narrow and wide right along on top of the creek there. But I don't see any evidence of foundation. So who knows what kind of an old log cabin it was. Probably redwood logs. And we're back up onto the old logging road. Hey, thanks for watching.